So to continue off from where we were last time, the starter is now on. And unfortunately the footage is going to look very dark and not the best, because essentially we forgot the light. So a lot of it is what we did in the first episode, but backwards. So if you find it hard to see what's going on, do refer to the video link below. So something I forgot to do was these two shiny bolts, these brand new bolts here, because the other ones were rotten, they needed to go on before the starter for the shifter linkage. They sit just in front of this little pressure plate, it's hard to show down here, that pushes in and out, as you can see, moving here by the boot. And then the other arm goes on the other side of it, and that's ups and downs, lefts and rights for the gear linkage, as you would have seen when Lex was showing us in the first episode. So again, a lot of what we're doing now is relating back to that episode. So to be honest with you, that's probably the better one to watch. Just do everything backwards. But this video is here if you need as well. So now that this engine mount on this side is fully in, we now need to work on some of the others. Now the other side, we're going to have to get the car in a weird angle to get to. The front one's probably the easiest. Now tricky one is this back one, which essentially has fallen to pieces. So it's this mount here. I need to figure out which bolt goes with this one, which is probably one of these longer ones. But first I have to bolt it to the actual I think this goes into the transmission itself. So again, figuring out which bolts, which I believe it's one of these like really just nasty bolts. So if I can find a new bolt to put in there, I will. If not, might be a bit tricky. But let's go under the car and go from there. So essentially with where I am, this little ball thing sits in this mount here that you can see. And the actual mount goes onto this bleeding bracket for the master cylinder. So I've got to undo that bolt that I put back in there. So the mount's back here. Now I need to just get a small jack to jack up this engine mount to match up there, and then pop a bolt through, and then I can start tightening some of the hard lines. By using a jack and a block, I've been able to line the bolt up and get it inside. Then I need to just bend back this securing section, but I'm going to make sure it's nice and tight with a socket before I tighten anything off, because we don't want this coming loose. Now I'm going to start to reconnect these hard lines before moving on to the final couple mounts, and then the gearbox linkage afterwards. So there's two that go into here. Now don't put a lot of pressure on these, they don't need it. As long as when we're bleeding the system later, we check to make sure they're tight. They do not need to be on like crazy. Same with this one up here for when that goes on. I couldn't quite remember which one of these retaining clips it is. I think it'll be the rustier one that just goes on to hold that in place when we've tightened everything down. So let's get to that. I think it's a 12mm on all of them. Might even be an 8mm actually. This one here is definitely a 12mm up the top. Yeah, these look like 8mm, so I'm gonna go grab an 8mm as well. So I advise with these hard lines, you really do pay attention and take things slow. Because mine was so old and crusty, I had to take this 1/8 or 27 die or tap kit and essentially re-thread the tip, because when I pulled it out there was too much pressure on and it ended up rounding a section. But also using some penetrant and then afterwards blasting it with degreaser to get that all out, but most of it will be out this tube anyway. I cannot stress enough how slow and careful you have to be with these, and not to tighten them too tight either. These two bolts here, and even this one here, which is feeling mighty crusty as well. So hopefully you have better luck with this one than the ones we've just done. So now that is the mounts on the left hand side finished and the back. Now we're on to the right and then the main, and then we'll do drive shafts and everything. So when we originally took this bolt out of this side engine mount, as you can see there's a gap there, we didn't actually take this whole unit out. So there's a nut and a bolt on the bottom, and then a nut and a bolt on the top, and then this bracket here. But essentially when these little bungs that you can see here with front, middle 2 and number 11 on the back there, which just states that it's this side's engine mount bushings, they fell out and disaligned, so we weren't able to get the bolt back in. Now instead I'm going to try and line this up with the engine loose, with these mounts loose, and hopefully we can get this bolt through first and then do the top and bottom bolts, because they're much easier with these studs sticking out. It's just a different approach, making things a little easier. This technique's so much easier because I've just been able to just wiggle this round until the bolt's gone through one side, as you can see pointing at the screwdriver. Now I just need to feel with my left hand to make sure that it's gone through on the other side. I don't know if I can do this with one hand, but I'm going to just wiggle it until I can feel the tip of the bolt threading in, which so far it feels like it is actually going in, and then the other bolts are much easier to align and pull the engine back up to where it should be. So I might have to do this off camera because it's a little tricky, but yeah, I can feel the back of the bolt through the other side. So I definitely recommend taking these brackets off top and bottom. A little tricky to get to past the timing belts. As long as you've got a couple of extensions, you should be fine to get in there. I'd recommend using an impact to loosen them up because they're on tight, and it's much quicker, and also will pull the engine up equally rather than you doing it by hand. You're going to struggle. Now that is all of the engine mounts on, and then my hands look kind of gross. I think I've just got to put the exhaust mount one on now, and then work out back the clutch lines, so like the gear selecting lines and things like that. So it's just these ones here, which are just 2 bolts, which will straighten this exhaust section up so it's not just all over the place. And then I'm going to undo the engine hoist, get everything out of the way so that there's plenty of room to go underneath, sort the shifter cables out, and then we should be hopefully on a home stretch. So I have just reconnected just here the starter wire and the wire that goes to main harness for our spark plugs and everything. And then next is the shifters I've lined up, and then I just need to put the bracket on back up from underneath. Then I've got a couple of lines to put on. Not too bothered about the air lines, but the coolant line definitely need to do that. And then we'll be on to bleeding everything and making sure everything's all right. The engine does look a little like laid back, but I mean that just might be the fact I haven't seen this car's engine or car with the engine in quite a while. Well, I hope it's that at least. I'll have to look back in the previous videos. So now that I have assistance, we're going to move the engine hoist away because it's not doing anything, and then I'll go underneath and connect the shifter cables. But yeah, we're going to let go of the engine hoist finally. Just going up for some clearance, and then I should be able to, ignoring everything else that's underneath that's going to stop it from coming back out. It's getting caught on like everything under the sun. Do you mind recording?
Yeah.
There we go. Finally! It's only taken like a month longer than we wanted to. Due to work outside of work, things happen. And the engine hoist is packed away, so hopefully this has all gone well. But now it's just axles, rear sway bars, obviously air filter and airbox, but I'm not worried about that right now. Essentially the main things we've got to do for the clutch shot specifically is going to be getting the gear shift linkage back on, filling the gearbox, and then filling the oil, but also filling the clutch fluid. But I have to change this caliper first, which actually I might do in a separate video, just because, oh no, I've already done that in a video. Never mind, I'll include it in this, why not? Just a quick going through of that. Now the gear linkage is back on as in episode 1. It's all attached. I just need to add cotter pins However, we've just received some new cotter pins, so probably going to use those because they'll be a lot nicer than the old ones. They're just in here. I just need to find whatever shape or design they were in. I'm not sure. I think these were the ones that were on there. Like washer system to hold them in. So just going to replicate this sort of shape for both of them really. Now I've got the pin here on the top. I'm just going to push it in a little more with some pliers and then give it a little like loop up so that everything stays together, and the same for down below as well. It's hard to show on camera, but I'm just going to knock it in a bit more. The pliers, just give it a little persuasional push and then grab the bottom leg and then give it a twist and flick up just so that it doesn't shake loose or anything like that. I could have used the original pins, but because they were crusty I just wanted to use something new. And then I'll make sure they're not in the way to touch anything else as well. And then I'll do the same below. Now to check that's gone on all correctly, I'm just going to go inside the car where it looks a bit off, to be fair, already. Just from the angle of the gear stick here, it's sort of off to the side, so it's making me think, is it possibly incorrect? Oh, I forgot I've got no clutch pedal, so that's great. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties and my boot deciding to fall off because I guess I've lost a clip, which is great because this one's a nice new one that I'll have to replace, I guess, but it is shifting through the gears fine. It just took a second for them to sort of get into their place. There's a really annoying buzzing sound, so I think there's a bee somewhere in here, but which kind of creeps me out because I don't like bees. But next I think is the drive shafts, to be honest. Everything on the top end is connected except for two of the grounds, so one of them being just up here and then the same on the other side, and then the air lines which haven't been done either. Besides that, all the gear shift linkage is on, it's moving, it's feeling pretty alright, but without fluid in the gearbox it's really difficult to tell. There is a bit of a squeak which is really annoying, so I'm not sure if that's on one of these components or the arms or something. Oh wow, that is a big bee. It's just trapping itself in here and hopefully won't sting me. That's a big old bee. But yeah, so the arms are moving around as they should. Feels like we're going into gears okay, but unfortunately this whole job we don't know until the gearbox fluid's back on, until we start the car, until all the drive shafts are back in. We genuinely have no idea. So onto the drive shafts and everything like that. Gearbox fluid, then I'm not going to worry about clutch fluid or anything like that because there's a chance that something's gone wrong. So we're literally just going to check if when I ram it into first, second, third gear or whatever's still in the lines clutch fluid wise, is it going into those gears? Are the wheels then turning that direction? And as long as they are, we should be fine. So drive shafts in, the suspension I'm going to have to also pop back together, except for this brake, and then also these rear sway bars as well. They're going to have to go straight back on. So by lining up the drive shaft inside and making sure the C-clamps were tight enough, giving them a little bash with a mallet, making sure to not destroy any of the threads, hopefully. They've gone in, they're now lined up, so it means we can start to put all this assembly back together. First of all, I'm going to put these tension rods at the back on, put the bolts through those, tighten those up, then these nuts, then the brakes are going to go back on, and then pretty much after that it's a home stretch. Obviously caliper bolt tightening, which I'll do in a moment as well. So we've got to remember that we've drained the oil at this point, we've drained the gearbox fluid. So the holes for those are easy to get on the other underside. But what we'll also do is take it off of jack stands because we need the car to be as level as possible when doing this. So let's get these bolts for these tension rods, which were the long bolts here and here. So I need to find a mysterious washer that's gone missing, probably in this pile somewhere or in here, and let's get these on. So Lex is having to remove the top 2 bolts so that we're able to get this in, because we cannot get the angle to get this back through. One side back in, move it on to there, and then to the other side. Oh, Lex is going to line up the other side for me. So the next stage is getting these on with cotter pins in them, and then we should be a home run on this. So then I think this goes on just like this, and then where there's a hole here, and now onto the other side. So again, for this is a 32 socket, and I'd definitely recommend using a new cotter pin because those old ones suck. So as I was getting this side on, I thought something was a bit odd and it wasn't going on. Batteries out of charge, both of them. So we're going to go to Halfords while we charge because Lex needs a couple of bits. We're going to take the workhorse for that. So we've got some charge, so hopefully this will go on. It's not looking crazy likely, but we'll see. And with the charged impact, that went in easy. We've got a cotter pin on there. Now to put the brakes on. Then we start the bleeding procedures, refilling the fluids. Just going to check all the bolts on this side. Yeah, we're all in except for the brake ones. And inside our bolts bin that we've been keeping the whole time, we've got a couple of old clips. This old banjo bolt, which is not going back on. Squeaker shims. Some bolts that we're just not putting back on. But mostly, these are all for calipers. So, hopefully, we should just be able to put these calipers back on, start the bleeding on everything, and get on with things. Looking at these pads, because they were replaced recently for the rears, and you don't have to change the rears too often, these are meaty. These are definitely going to survive until we do our upgrades on the car, let's say. However, the fronts are definitely going to need a change for when we're on track and everything.